Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Katie Pena, and today I'm going to be talking about how you, yes, you, can welcome the apocalypse. I hope it's down. Yes. So, Wes Jackson is an agricultural scientist, and Robert Jensen is a climate activist. And together, they say that we are a species out of context. Now, what necessarily does that mean? Within the last 10,000 or so years, with the invention of agriculture, we have been able to see population booms and technological innovations that have allowed human beings to grow in population way more than normally expected. So this being known and seeing how new nations have expanded their consumption and their economic growth, I wanted to see how new hyper-consumeristic societies like the United States could create a smoother transition into a future with net zero emissions. So humans are funny in the way that they associate the apocalypse with zombies in dystopian novels and dystopian movies. But what we should really be afraid of is food scarcity, the loss of important carbon sinks, and bad agricultural practices that lead to desertification. So in the Paris Agreement, they said that to avert the worst impacts of the climate crisis, we need to reduce our emissions to net zero by 2050. This is because of rising climate change and rising temperatures. So I wanted to start off by addressing the elephant in the room. What do I mean by the apocalypse? This is not defined in the biblical terms like rivers of blood and raptured bodies. It's more so defined by a drastic change where we can never go back to living in a consumption that we currently do. So in An Inconvenient Apocalypse by Wes Jackson and Robert Jensen, there are three specific terms that I wanted to go over for this presentation. The first one being the crisis of consumption. People are consuming too many goods and services, and it's based in unsustainable practices and unsustainable businesses. So people are buying new cars when their initial car is good and it's still running. People are buying designer bags and buying things that use too many resources and materials and destroys industries and destroys land. Next is the crisis of meaning. People identify themselves with what they can buy and what they have, how big their house is, how many luxury cars they have, how big their pool is. People see their identity as what they have. And lastly, there is the multiple cascading crises. This is the systemic collective failure of multiple systems that are based in unsustainable practices. For example, you have to go to work to support your family, but in order to do that, you have to drive a car that's fueled by gas. You can't stop going to work. And all of these systems that are based in unsustainable practices will eventually fall down and stop being tangible. So I know at least once in your life you've heard the phrase, "Why should I care about the climate crisis? I'm going to be dead anyways." And while, you can't say, "Oh, I'm going to live until 2050, like that's obviously not guaranteed. That's exactly the mentality that got us here. By being complacent because we are only individuals and we can't make a substantial change, we have allowed the burden and responsibility of technological innovation to allow us to continue living in these ways, and food insecurities and living with less. We have put that burden onto our children, our grandchildren, nieces and nephews. They're the ones that are going to have to deal with this crisis that we left behind for them. So 15,000 world scientists from a collective 184 countries say that because we're not reining in our material consumption, and because we don't recognize that our rapid population growth is behind many of the ecological threats and societal threats, we are being complacent and enabling our ecological destruction. So why is this happening? There are two main key terms that I wanted to go over to, starting with human exemptionalism. Because human beings are having the capacity to create culture because of their innate intelligence that is more superior to other animals. Human beings believe that they are exempt from the laws of conservation of energy and that they don't have to reduce their population. And this is because we've grown up in an era of rapid economic growth. Since 1920, back whenever we had around 2.5 billion people in our population, we have grown exponentially to around 8 billion now within 100 years, and our Earth cannot keep up. Additionally, with techno-optimism, human beings believe that technological innovation and human ingenuity and cleverness is going to allow us to continue consuming at the rate that we do now. But this is really a denial of agency. John Barry used the metaphor of biofueling the Hummer to try to explain this. The Hummer is our current society, and we are in an intensely energy inefficient vehicle, and that's moving us through life. We believe that by slapping a Band-Aid on it and biofueling it, that we're being more sustainable and that we're helping the environment when the main problem is our current actions and the vehicle that we're using to transport ourselves through life. So you might be hearing this and thinking, is all hope lost? But fear not, because there are many things that we can do to help increase our own sustainability. But this can only happen if we consider the likelihood that collapse is coming. Only then can we start to plan for the long term. So, what does a post-fossil fuel society look like? Or a society that's less dependent on fossil fuels in the first place? Well, it's defined by economic contraction. This goes back to our crisis of consumption and crisis of meaning. By being more conscious of what we use to identify ourselves and what we use to get us through life, the gas efficiency of our cars, just things like that, we can start to create a more efficient economic system. Additionally, there is low-tech living. This is mostly proposed in terms of what we can individually apply. So our energy-intensive washer and dryer systems, we can try doing hang line drying instead. We can take less hot showers, instead bringing it back to maybe like 5 minutes. Just implementing things like that. Then there are the gradual population reductions. And before you think I'm trying to say genocide, that is not what I'm trying to, that's not what I'm trying to say. And I want to highlight that we're already moving in this direction. With increased education of women and family planning, our populations are already decreasing because less people want to have children. Also, there's the ethical dilemma of, do I really want to bring children into a world with social injustices and environmental issues? So, let's talk about the incorporation of technology, what technology has in this role. So according to UK Fires, which is it's based in the United Kingdom, it's government operated and funded. This research facility said that breakthrough technologies are not going to be working at a high enough level to use the same amount of energy consumption that we have now. So this basically means that within the next 30 years, by the time we have to meet the 2050 deadline, the current technologies are not going to be operating at the same level of fossil fuels. We're still going to have that deficit. And so we need to instead shift to low energy consumption. However, we do need to talk about high-tech innovations that can be implemented in a low-tech society. So this includes our carbon capture systems, solar power, wind energy, hydro energy, and geothermal energy. These use natural resources that are, for the most part, not going to go out during our lifetimes, and we can use them to continue to live not off the grid, but in a society that's not the Stone Age. And these are important to recognize because they don't try to make the same types of energy as fossil fuels, but they work together with our goals to reduce our emissions. So I wanted to end off with a quote by Wes Jackson and Robert Jensen, and they basically say that the train is about to derail. Whether we like it or not, we're going to have to deal with these issues. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't. The future that we were promised as children of endless economic growth is not going to be tangible in our future. However, if we accept that a new future defined by contraction is coming, we can still save ourselves and minimize the human suffering that comes along with the end of fossil fuels. These are my references, and thank you.
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe for more content from LSC-Kingwood.